Okay, good morning. My name is Gary Matsuoka, and this is Laguna Hills Nursery in Santa Ana. And this morning we'll be talking about one of our favorite subjects, the growing of strawberries. So, strawberries is probably of course, I think pot plants may surpass it pretty soon, but up until this time, maybe for the last generation or two, it's been the biggest cash crop in Orange County. So they said they grow about $14 million worth of strawberries last year on about 250 acres of property in Orange County. It's definitely going down. Too many houses now, but still, it's a major crop here. So we are a real wonderful climate for growing strawberries for the winter. Now, most of the strawberries in the U.S. are grown on the Central California coast, which is great for spring and summer. The Orange County, San Diego, LA County crop is very valuable because it's first harvested right around Christmas, right around December. So that's the advantage, is we're the only place on the continental United States that can grow strawberries for that time of year. Florida doesn't come in. Florida just has too cold a few weeks in winter is too cold, they lose their crop, and they usually pick up late January. But our crop, commercially here anyway, is December through May into June. The heat kind of shuts them down. So strawberries were developed in Europe. The modern strawberry was developed in Europe between, the breeders in Europe found unusual strawberries in the U.S. The nice, nice tasting ones in the eastern United States, eastern North America, and then the real large fruited species of strawberries all up and down the west coast of North and South America. Now in Europe they have what are called the woodland strawberries or alpine strawberries, which are relatively small plants, real tiny, powerfully flavored fruit. But the fruit is quite small. There has been some work trying to breed these to make them bigger, but every time they do that, they kind of lose their special flavor because they just have an outstanding flavor. The alpine or woodland strawberries produce more in the summer months, whereas the strawberries that we're dealing with, the big ones, are primarily a winter-spring crop. So we do have, now California's been breeding strawberries for quite a while, so one of the first breeders was, I believe, Edders up in Northern California, but they've been doing a lot of research for us anyway at the Irvine South Coast Field Station in Irvine, California. They did a lot of breeding there to create the modern strawberries probably since the 50s. They've been doing it. Now the work's transferring up north because there's more strawberry spring going up north than here, but still, a lot of the famous ones are here. So strawberry-wise, besides the alpine, which are real tiny berries that ripen in the summer, the ones that we grow, there's a type called the spring bearing, which used to be our big one, but now we generally grow the everbearing. So if you've been growing strawberries for a while, you might recognize the name of some of the spring bearing ones. Sequoia, which was the first famous one that was developed by University of California, I think. Real big, real tasty. It has some disadvantage in that it doesn't sit on the vine very long, and it has a short shelf life, but certainly it's got the size and the quality that we were looking for. So Sequoia was famous. Another one that we've sold up until recently is Chandler, but there's been others. I believe Douglas and a few others were ones that we've sold over the last 40 years or so. What they do is they'll be bearing from now until it gets warm. So once we get to about June, late June, early July, they stop flowering. The last fruit ripens late July, early August, and then that's it for the year on the spring-bearing ones. The ever-bearing ones tend to slow down a bit when it gets hot, but they continue to bear fruit year-round. So that's what most of our homeowners prefer, and that's what we're carrying nowadays. So the most famous one in the world may be Albion, which we've carried up until now. And that just came out a few years ago. What we carry instead is Sweet Ann. So right now we've got Sweet Ann. Sweet Ann and Albion are very similar, so they're both really big and very conical. So one of the things that the breeders were searching for was a very uniformly shaped strawberry. Because you can see where some strawberries are wedge-shaped, they're square, wedge-shaped, where they're like this, and they're flat on one side, and those don't pack as well. So they said that the ones that are very regularly cone-shaped are what the packers want because they'll pack better than the ones that are kind of wedgy. So they said the Albion, the Sweet Anns are very uniformly shaped like tops, like a spinning top. So very good that way. Plus, they've got the flavor, the size, the flesh color's red. You know, everything that everybody wanted is in those. We also do Seascape. And another one that's real popular is San Andreas. The fault with the Albion has been that it, in lieu of making flowers and berries, it's been making a lot of runners. So you have to keep clipping runners off so that it makes more flowers, puts more energy into flowers, whereas the other ones tend not to do it as much. Otherwise, they're all good. Another one that we often carry is Monterey, but I can't remember if it's a spring bearer or an ever bearer. Monterey is supposed to have a very unique flavor, but it is susceptible to mildew, so we don't carry it as often. But we'll probably have some sometime this year. So with strawberry plants, you can buy them almost any time of the year in 6-packs and in the 4-inch pots. But you know, there's not much root in here compared to, so this time of year, when they commercially plant the farms, pretty much they buy in what are called the bare root strawberries. So there's a number of farms in California, but the big one is Lassen Canyon up in Northern California near Shasta, those areas. In fact, they've got farms all over the place to serve different areas, and they also serve different countries. But they grow the strawberry plants in the ground. In fact, let me just kind of show what strawberries do. So take a strawberry plant. It's kind of a centralized plant. They've got leaf stems. The leaves have 3 leaflets on them. And when they're multiplying, what they do is they send out runners that then reroot and make new little plants. And because it comes from the mother plant, it's genetically identical. So all the baby plants that this plant is making are identical to the mother. You can take a strawberry seed and grow it, but then that's like your kids. It's genetically different. So the growers want an identical crop, so they take the runners off, and that's what we're getting. That's what we sell. So the mother plant is making strawberries. So it flowers. and then the flowers become the berries. They're usually a cluster, usually 3, sometimes more. But so the clusters are made for most strawberry plants. The heavy season is winter, spring, or the cool season. And then in the summertime, they put a lot of energy into making runners and they make the new plants. And then they make their own roots, of course. So the roots down here, roots down here. Now, strawberry plants are perennials. They don't make true stems. They just have the leaves coming from a kind of a crown here. So crown, the roots go down, the leaves are shooting upwards. Generally, they live 3 to 4 years. 3 years is typical. I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of perennials. There's a lot of perennials that tend to do well for 3 years. Dahlias, penstemon, quite a number of them. I think yarrow's another one. Even gazanias. They seem to do well for about 3 years. What happens is they eventually fill the ground around them with dead strawberry roots, and it just kind of makes them go downhill. The runners escape, they go somewhere else and reroot and then start over here. So that's how they keep healthy. They keep on traveling away from the old place. And of course, the seeds can sprout too. So, but what happens is these babies will form usually summer, fall, get some size going. What triggers them to start blooming heavily is a cool spell. So they have a need for winter chill. Makes them get going to think it's spring. Once they get that winter chill and then you expose them to warmer weather, they think it's spring. It's time to make their main crop. So the growers up in Northern California, they're in the foothills. I don't know what altitude, I can't remember. It was 1,500 feet or so. And it's cold up there right now where they are. So their strawberry plants already have their winter. And then on top of that, when they pull them out of the ground, shake off the dirt and send them us, they're put in a refrigerator at about 45 degrees, which also gives them, that's the proper temperature for chill also. So they're totally have their winter by the time the farmers get them down here, put them in the ground, it's 80 degrees, they start growing like it's spring and they start producing right away. That's one reason you would want to get new strawberry plants every winter or every fall, is that they've already had their winter. If you grow strawberry plants for several years and keep the same plant here, generally they won't start to make their heavy crop until about March or even April. So they have to go through the winter first and then they start to flower and fruit. Whereas if you buy a new one that's already been chilled, you'll have a crop by winter if you do it now. Instead of, you'll gain a few months, 2 or 3 months if you get a pre-chilled one. Now, Sunset Magazine did run an article 20, 25 years ago saying that you can take these runners or whatever plant you have, you can take the main plant too, and shake off the dirt and put it in your refrigerator for 2 weeks. And that'll give it the chill it needs. And then plant it back in the ground. So if you want to do that much work, you don't have to buy new ones. But since these plants are like 70 cents each, it might be just easier to buy new plants. So we just got a box of 1,000 strawberry plants, and this is what they look like when we get them. They range in size from really tiny, I mean, they send us some really small plants that are no bigger than this, to plants that are pretty massive. This is the runner that made them. They often have a secondary runner because when strawberry plants grow, they often do this. They make another runner off of that little runner plant to make, so they keep on cascading out there. So we get a box full, and the farmers get boxfuls of these strawberry plants that they pulled out of the ground and shaken all the dirt off of them. And if you're not planting right away, you can throw these back in the fridge, make sure they're a little moist, keep them in a plastic bag, not too wet, and make sure they don't freeze. You don't want them to, if you freeze the roots, then they'll die. or take forever to recover. So they cut off all the leaves when they send them to us. You've got a few leaves starting to grow already. When you plant them in the ground, some instructions, they emphasize this too much. You know, they say, well, you have to be really careful not to cover the ground with dirt or leave the roots exposed. Well, it's kind of self-explanatory. You know, these are roots. Now, sometimes the stems are a little hard to distinguish, but the roots have kind of hairy. They have little root hairs on them, so you can tell them that way. This is actually a leaf stem. I'll just pull that off. It just breaks off. This was its umbilical cord here. Here's another one. So this was a series of runners, and then these are all leaf stems here. They're still green, so I'll just keep them. They'll still photosynthesize a bit. So you want to plant them roughly in the ground about like that. I mean, if you get our potting soil, if you plant them too deep, nothing happens. If you plant them too shallow, they still grow. It's not as critical as they're telling you it is. When you see how they plant on the farms, they're planting so fast. There's just no way they can be that accurate. But you know, the goal is to get them in the ground about like that. And also, it's, you know, in the farms, when they're planting 10,000 plants, they're not going to spread the roots out. They just essentially spike a hole in the ground and try to get the roots going downwards. But if you can put a little mound of soil underneath them and spread the roots out like they were in the ground when they, you know, so in the ground in nature or on the farm, they were probably spread out about like that. So if you put a little hill of soil right underneath them, put this on top and then put the soil around it so they're spread out a little bit, that's a little more efficient than just putting them straight in. However, that's what the farms do. So you're good either way. And then you water real thoroughly. Make sure that ground gets nice and wet. On the farms, they turn the sprinklers on for like 12 hours. I mean, it's on a long, they have the little impulse sprayers going, but it's just like, it seems to be like a whole day. They have to get everything nice and wet because strawberries like it wet. And these are delicate going in. So the way that the farmers do the fields, so there's there's a lot of farms that are conventional, a lot of farms that are also organic in this area. The conventional farms get the earlier crop. And the way they do it, there's several ways they can do it, but this is one way that I was taught how they do it. So they use their tractors to make berms, and if you've got decent soil, these berms are about 18 inches high. So they're sandy dirt, make them 18 inches high, make really good drainage that way. They usually do between 2 and 4 rows of strawberries. They're doing more rows because, you know, the path in between where the tractor wheels roll and people walk is a waste of space. So if you only make this too wide, you spend half your land is in the little walking space. So what they do now is they do 4 rows of strawberry plants going across. They put 2 drip tubes between those two to water it. But first, before they do that, so here they're forming the dirt into these berms that go up and down the field. And then conventional-wise, what they do is they cover the field in plastic. And in the drip lines that they have going down here, they run a fumigant through there to sterilize everything. I'm not sure what they use now. Chlorpicrin is one. They've done away with a lot of the bad fumigants that would kind of destroy the ozone layer, although that's not the primary concern anymore in our world. But anyway, they run a fumigant in here, a chemical fumigant, which sterilizes the soil. And the reason for that is because they don't rotate their crops. So you see this, you know, along the 5 freeway in Lake Forest, there's one field that they use for strawberries every year. Now, of course, they turn over the soil, so it's kind of dilutes the dead roots from the previous crop. But what they do is when they put the fumigant out, it kills all the disease organisms that are working on those old strawberry roots. They kill all the weeds, the weed seeds, all the bugs, and then they let it air out for a couple of weeks. The fumigants generally just evaporate through the plastic slowly. What they do too is they cut the plastic then, so the plastic is hugging the hill like this. So they let it air out for 2 weeks so the fumigant is gone. And then they have a tractor with spikes, wheels on it, a little wheel turning on with spikes on it. They spike holes every 18 inches or so into the plastic. And then they take, now most farms, the people still plant these. So there's a guy that's got the box and he's laying one of these by each hole they spiked in. And then some people walk behind him. And I've seen two methods where they have the roots like this, and they have a little dibble with the blunt end on it, and it just catches the root like this and pushes it down into the dirt so that most of it is straight down. And then this is about sticking out of the plastic like this. Whereas on other farms, they just take their hand like this, and the soil on these farms is very sandy, so they just push it through where the hole was spiked, and they can push it in there and get it at the right level and then just cover it up. So they're doing those by hand. Now we've seen some farms where they actually have machines to do the planting, but they can't use the plastic then. So the advantage of this clear plastic is the temperature underneath there gets, it's easily 100 degrees on a 90-degree day or even hotter. So that ground is warming up real fast. These plants are growing really quick. You can't do that unless you fumigate. The clear plastic, if you don't fumigate it, because our customers have tried, they said, we put clear plastic on the ground, and all we got was a jungle of weeds underneath there. So the weeds just sprout like crazy underneath the clear plastic. The strawberry plants can compete. So the farmers who fumigate use the clear plastic. Now the farmers who don't, the organic farmers, they have to do a different method. They can't plant them in the same field every year. So we were next to a farm, where we're on a farm actually, sharing a farm with an organic farmer, and they were planting strawberries once every 10 crops. We never saw them, we were there for 4 years, we never saw them plant strawberries in the same field twice. So, like 5 years, 6 years between growing strawberries in the same dirt. They'd plant other crops. And finally, after so many years of no strawberry plants, they figured, okay, now all those diseases that resulted from having the dead strawberry plants left over in the ground are gone now. We can plant strawberries again. And they would cover their field with black plastic, and that would stop the weeds from coming through. Black plastic does not heat up the soil as well as clear. So black gets hot, but most of the heat's radiated right off the black plastic. It doesn't get through the plastic as well as it does the clear plastic. So it still warms the soil, but not as much as the clear does. So the organic farmers don't have that real early advantage that the ones that do conventional ones are with the clear plastic. So in the sandy soil, they water daily. They build their berms 18 inches high. Now, if you've got clay soil and you want to have good drainage, then you make higher berms. So on the Central Coast, Monterey, those areas where they grow most of the strawberries in California, some of those areas are kind of like Seal Beach, Los Alamitos. It's clay, this heavy, thick clay, to get the drainage they need for strawberries. So strawberry roots need to breathe air. And if there's water stuck in the clay too long, they can't breathe and it stunts their growth. So what they do is instead of 18 inches, they make their berms 36 inches. So they really raise them up. Some of the farmers on the Central Coast have a website and they have videos in there with the kids running through the fields, and you see the heads. Because these berms are really high. To get that same drainage that they have at 18 inches on sandy soil, you need a 36-inch berm. They cover that in plastic too, so the rain won't wash it down. And they'll plant 4 rows of strawberries across there.
Did they change the soil on that by adding things on that top 36, or they just
Nope.
drains?
Yeah. Whenever you raise anything higher than ground level, so water tends to get pulled down to ground level. No matter how high you raise it, the water table's down here. So when you raise clay up 36 inches, the water gets kind of pulled down to this level. And when it gets pulled down to this level, the air kind of comes in behind it. So 36 inches of clayish soil will breathe as well as 18 inches of sandy loam, which has a little bit of clay, but not very much. So they get good results that way. And then they harvest until it gets hot. Now, in Northern California, not Central, but in Northern California, they're not worried about the early crop at all. So they actually have beds that they'll use for 3 or 4 years. They don't replant. They'll just keep the same strawberries in there that long a time. Now, when I was little, I was curious. I was puzzled because on the farms they plant strawberries 18 inches apart. And in our nursery, the strawberry plants, you know, like in 4-inch pots and things, they're only like this big. I was going, that's a lot of wasted space. Until I went on the farms and I saw how big the strawberry plants really get. But so this back in the 80s, when we put them in pots in the potting soils of that time, like super soil, they'd only get like 8 inches wide. Fruit would get as big as your thumbnail. I thought that's as good as we can do. But in the 1990s, we started experimenting with soil, and the first plant we experimented with was strawberries. We put them in 12-inch pots filled with pure sand and got strawberry plants that were 2 feet wide. And I finally understood why they planted them 18 inches apart in the field, because the plants get 2 feet wide. A healthy strawberry plant is huge. But if you grow them in potting soil, sometimes this is all you get. Most potting soils are not good enough for strawberry plants, especially from this grower. This is the worst soil we've ever seen a grower use, but they're the only ones we can get the alpines from. So if you buy an alpine strawberry, take it out of here, shake a lot of the dirt off, make it a bare root, put it in better dirt, it'll be a lot better. Of course, alpines don't get much bigger than about 8 inches across. They're small plants, small berries. But we expect these plants to get about 2 foot wide in good soil. So leaflets, the single leaflets are like that. They're like 3 inches across. They're huge. And that's one way you can tell how good your soil is too. If you grow a strawberry plant in any potting soil, or the soil in your garden, you'll know by the size of the leaves and the size of the plant how good your soil is. Yes?
How will these particular berries, will they fruit several times, and about how many fruits do you get out of such a big?
Okay, that's a good question. So one strawberry plant in general makes about 1 basket of strawberries per year, however many that is. Now, when I was growing, I've grown strawberries quite a few years. Generally, you can get about, per plant, maybe at their maximum spring production, about 2 berries off of 1 plant every week. And then it gets real light in the summer and then moderate in the fall. But they say about 1 basket of strawberries per plant per year. So when I was a bachelor, I grew about 10 plants. That's not bad. 10 plants, 22 berries, 20 berries a week, say, for quite a while. That's not bad. One of our employees took home 100 plants yesterday because his mom wants a lot of strawberries. So 100 plants. We have quite a few customers that do 100. So that's a couple hundred berries a week at max production. So now the farmers, just so you know, they pick usually twice a week on all their field. That's a lot of work. You don't want to be a farmer. Going through these fields twice a week to pick the berries. So you can go out there every morning and have fun with them. So, but to have to do it as a job is you know, they're right about knee level, the plants. Just the worst height, you know, where you're like this. If you're on the farms in the Central Valley, it's not bad. They're right here. They're right at waist height. So.
Flip them, or do they just snap them?
Snap them off. Okay, so watering pretty much daily. You want to keep the ground pretty wet. They in nature, they live by riverbeds, so you don't want that soil to dry out. Fertilizer-wise, there's a lot of options. Now, University of California, when they did research on the strawberries, they just said they use this one, Osmocote 14-14-14. Now, I don't know how good they were as far as getting the max production. They were just doing the breeding, but we would rather use this. You know, between the two Osmocotes, I like this one better, the 15-9-12. That the numbers make more sense than 14-14-14. I mean, people who don't know that much will tell you, well, 14-14-14 is a balanced fertilizer. Well, plants don't have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in the same ratio. It's more, this is closer to the true ratio of 15-9-12. So we'd rather use this one than this one. This one, plus this one has 11 minerals, this one only has 3. So on this one, if you're using this, you're expecting your soil to make up the difference. We've also used, to grow strawberries, palm food, 15-5-15. Now, if you want to be organic, fruit tree fertilizers, Dr. Earth makes a good one. Down to Earth also makes a good one, and I kind of like the numbers on this one better, 6-2-4. But they'll both work. And how often you apply it is how long they last. Commercially, the farmers use liquid organic fertilizers on the organic farms. Usually we don't do stuff like that because it smells like sewage. It's really bad smelling. They have to get stuff that works faster. Most fertilizers, the organic ones, I would say every 2 to 3 months you'd reapply. Every month is fine. The water-soluble chemical fertilizers, every 2 weeks. You've got to apply these. They don't last very long at all. And then the time-release ones, this one's supposed to last 3 months, and the pink one, the one we use, is supposed to last 6. So you're putting on more of this one since it's a slower release. So we do this one primarily for convenience, and that we can't get out there every 2 weeks to apply a liquid water-soluble or every month or two to do an organic. This is just easier for us to do. In the long run, the organics are better for your garden. Short term, not as big a deal, but you want to get the organics on there. Now, so that's how farms do their work. Now, in your own garden, you have options. You can put them in pots, you can put them in raised beds, you can put them on the flat ground. The main thing is controlling pests. So the main pests on strawberries tends to be snails and pill bugs. They eat the berries right when they're ripening. And on the ground, you've got to do more pest control for both of those. We do have organic ones that work okay. So this Monterey Ant control is organic and controls all the critters on the ground, including snails, slugs, ants, pill bugs. earwigs, things that might want to crawl around and eat your strawberry fruit. Sluggo Plus, made by the same company, is almost the same material as this. So that's fine. We do have sprays that'll control the pill bugs. The main thing we see at the farms, and you may not see this at your house, or you might, because farms are monocultures where they have hundreds of acres of the same plant. When you have a such situation like that, they tend to get spider mites very easily. So spider mites don't appear as much in a yard with all different kinds of plants. But when you just have one plant out there, spider mites are little tiny spiders that live on the bottom of the leaves, make little tiny webs, make the green disappear, kind of turns gray. They're sucking the life out of the leaves. It's a major problem on strawberry farms. Generally on the organic farms, you'll see them running tractors through with booms on them, spraying oil. You can smell it. So they use oil sprays. This is a horticultural oil from a mineral source, petroleum in the ground. Or you can get organic oils like neem. This is a mixture of rosemary, sesame, peppermint, thyme, cinnamon, and garlic oil. So those oils will control a lot of pests also. This one is corn oil and soybean oil. Now we haven't, on a lot of plants, a new serious pest are the chili thrips that mess up flowers and developing fruit. Strawberries not as big a deal only because the main crop is in the winter and spring before the chili thrips. Chili thrips usually come out late summer. But if you have strawberries and you're getting really ugly fruit, that's probably thrips doing that. Then we use the Captain Jack's dead bug brew with spinosad to control thrips. And they generally mess up berries. They mess up blackberries, raspberries, chili, rosebuds.
Now, would you get less bugs using one of those strawberry plant clears, with all the holes on the side? You don't even recommend those at all?
Those are fine. So there's a lot of ways to grow strawberries. In Florida, they actually grow them in towers. They'll have a metal post, and they'll have these little containers strung up this post, and they grow strawberries suspended off the ground. I'm not sure what the advantage of doing that is, but it does keep soil critters off of them. So you can put strawberries in hanging baskets. And you can probably, grow, say in this basket, maybe 3 plants, 1 to 3. And if it's hanging up, you certainly won't get snails, pill bugs, or anything like it, any of the creepy crawlies on the ground getting your strawberries. Plus, strawberries hang over the edge, the birds can't get them either. So the one big advantage of containers is that the birds can't, the berries that are dangling off the edge, the birds just don't get them. They can't handle that. They've got to be on the ground pecking at them. But on the edge of a pot dangling, they just don't seem to be able to get them. So hanging baskets, pots in general, keeping them off the ground does a good job. So now in a pot, we do use you can use sand. I mean, sand works. But if you like something lighter, we've always grown our strawberries in our acid mix potting soil. So that's what we're using here. It's better than the other potting soils out there. Most potting soils, again, you'll get a plant. There's a few good potting soils that'll give you 5 months of good operation. But if you want a potting soil that'll last for years, our acid mix will do that, and you'll certainly get plants a good foot and a half wide in our acid mix. So one setup that I did in my yard was use these 8-inch pots, and generally you'd water this every day. What we did is we put them in these deep saucers, just like this, and once a week I would water the plant thoroughly and let the saucer overflow so there's no salt buildup. So it would fill up with water and it would last the entire week. By the next Sunday the water would be gone and then I would do it again. So I don't have to water once a week instead of watering every day. In our acid mixed potting soil, the plant will sit in water without any problem. It will not cause root rot on the strawberries. And the other thing that this did, it's a moat for most of the week. The pill bugs don't like water, the snails didn't cross it. So even though this was setting on the ground at my house, no bug damage on the strawberries, no bird damage either. They still couldn't handle the berries just dangling there for some reason. So it kept it pretty bug free. And I had 10 of these lined up. It's actually on a little seat wall that I had them lined up on.
What do you do about animals, though? Raccoons, possums, rats?
For some reason, I never had a problem with these. I don't know, it may not have been exciting enough, or they couldn't maybe, because when I had grapes ripening in the summer, yeah, I get inundated by birds and raccoons on that, but the strawberries didn't seem to attract that much attention. I only had 10 plants, so maybe they just didn't see them or didn't smell them. So I didn't track much wildlife to those at all. I would imagine if you had 100 of these, yeah, you'd probably get some activity going on. I mentioned this, but one reason to buy bare roots over 6-packs is that the only way that the grower can get one of these plants into the 6-pack is to cut off most of the roots. In fact, you know, on the internet, there's some instructions to how to plant strawberries in pots. You cut off half the roots. It's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. But the growers have to do that to get them in the pots that they grow them in. Even in the 4-inch pots, they have to cut up the root system. So it's an instruction that's out there that shouldn't be followed by homeowners. If you put them in bigger pots, you don't have to cut the roots. But in the trade, universally, they have to cut these roots to fit them in these little tiny pots. So that instruction has been copied so that everybody's supposed to take these roots and trim them, but don't trim them. Just leave them as big as they are, which are, you know, too big for those little 2-inch pots. Okay, now there's other ways to grow strawberries too. So we've seen on the experimental farms where they have these gutters set up, hydroponic gutters, and they have the strawberry plants in them. Of course, the big thing now is vertical farms. Be aware, you know, all that stuff is so expensive to put together. You know, your little towers are too. So they caution farmers, you know, like the only place where you'd want to do vertical farming is probably in Canada, where you can't do outdoor farming most of the year. Because they said that vertical farms so far, you know, the greenhouses with all these setups, 1/4 of them are profitable. So 3/4 of them don't make any money or are losing money like crazy. So they're trying to, and the only reason they're getting grants to create vertical farms is to get the technology down so one day they will be profitable. But so far, they're not profitable in general, unless you're way up north where they just can't grow things outside. So kind of stick with the tried and true. I mean, pots, you know, unless you keep this going for a few years, you're probably not get your money's worth out of it, because this container, well, of course you can get a cheaper pot. You can get a pot this size essentially almost free. The saucer's 50 cents or so. The soil to fill this is about $1, $1.50. So it might cost you $3 totally, including the fertilizer, to have this set up. So you've got to be able to get at least $3 worth of strawberries out of this, which is what, a couple baskets? something like that. So you got to have this going for more than a year to make good profit. Of course, they'll taste better than the ones that you buy at the store, since you're picking when they're ripe. So if you don't really want to try to make money with your own produce. Okay. Of course, there's another pot you can use. Something like this is probably good enough for 4 to 5 strawberry plants. And, well, so we do sell these. These are, so a regular 1 gallon container, which in the nursery trade is not really 1 gallon, it's like 0.7, is not really big enough for a strawberry plant. The little 1 gallon, this is a true 1 gallon bag. And we do sell these on one of our shelves here. I think it's the one that's turned around and this one turned around. So we have some customers growing 100 strawberries in these bags, which only run, you get 25 for $5. So that's not too bad. And you can probably fill about 8 or 9 of these with 1 bag of our soil.
Do we have some kind of journey?
Holes, there's holes on the sides. And again, you can set them in a saucer of water if you don't want to have to water them every day. One of our customers sends me pictures of his setup. He's got, I think, little drip tubes going to each one. So he says it's worked out quite well. Let's see. Any other questions today? I don't know if I covered.
Can your snake keep away a raccoon?
You're talking about the fake snakes. Yeah, they stop birds, but they don't really stop much else. So when they make these runners, if you're in a container, of course, they're just hanging out there in space. So you can put a little pot next to your plant, and then this will root right into your little container, and then you have another plant. And it is genetically identical. The only disadvantage of this is it hasn't been pre-chilled, so that it won't bear until the next spring. Any questions today? We just got the berries in on Thursday, so we haven't even marked where we have them yet, but there's a refrigerator right over here that we usually keep our ladybugs in. It's the right temperature for strawberries, so if you want to get strawberry plants, we have the bare roots in there.
So you sell them with bare root plants?
Right. We have the 6-packs outside, but since we have the bare roots now, I would tell you it's much better price. Well, better plants, put it that way. It's a much bigger plant.
Did you say those are St. Anne or?
Sweet Ann. Sweet Ann is probably the best strawberry you can grow right now. Really big berries, as big as you can get. The main thing that we learned about them is production-wise. So the Albions, which around the world, and they were developed by University of California, are considered the top strawberry. Production Albions has been 13,000 pounds per acre? No, I think it was 13,000 cases per acre. I can't remember now exactly what it was, but these were like 23,000. They were almost double the production of Albion, because they said Albion just makes too many runners, too much energy making these things, whereas the Sweet Anns made relatively few runners. So Sweet Anns they're very close related. And then so Sweet Anns came in at 23,000. I think San Andreas came in around 18,000, pretty close. There's a number of them that are way up there, but Albion, when it came out, was the best tasting strawberry, but it has some issues now, whereas Sweet Anns don't seem to. The only thing would be is the chill. So these won't, if you overwinter them, They might take till March to start bearing. The next crop we get in will be San Andreas, which was developed for San Diego, I think, or even out in the desert areas. So that thing doesn't need much cold to get into its spring production. So if you overwintered at San Andreas, it might start producing a month earlier or even 2 months earlier than the Sweet Anns. But for the first year, there's no issues. Sweet Ann is about as good as you can get.
Are these the type of berries that are more firm, like they sell in the stores, or are they back to their originals where they didn't last long, but they were real good?
Well, they're not as, so they're firm, but they're not commercial firm. So the ones that are usually, the berries usually used commercially, Camarosa, which are almost crispy. You know, there's berries that are almost crispy. Don't like those at all. These are not like that at all. I've had comments from our customers over the year, because we had these last year too, and most of the comments said this is the best strawberry we've ever grown. A few of them didn't like them or didn't have good production, but that might have been the ones that they bought them too late. You know, we kind of throw away the strawberries toward February or March, and they might have put them in real late, and might have been a bad batch at that point. But we have quite a few really positive comments on them. But Albion was, you know, still recognized as the best tasting strawberry.
You recommend refrigerating them a little longer, or no?
No, they're ready to go. They've had plenty of time. We noticed on the internet that there's some information that says don't refrigerate them too long. Now, we don't know why that's on there. They said it will delay production, but the grower says differently. They said they told us we can keep these in the fridge till May and plant them and they'll be fine. Because they sell them in May in Canada, Oregon, those areas. So.
I'm wondering, out at Tinapa Farm, they have the tubes with holes in them and plastic trays, and they do them all horizontally, but like that, have you ever tried anything like that? No?
Well, the setup is pretty expensive, so yeah, that's the gutter system. Now, the advantage of that is you don't have to fumigate, and you have very few pest problems. So that would be it's like putting them in a container, but just in a cheaper container that's built that way. So you can make things. You can take the big drainage pipes, put caps on the end, put holes in them, and plant strawberries in that. That's essentially the idea that is being done. So the thing about hydroponics, though, when you do it that way, now they may not be doing true hydroponics. It might be straw in there. Right. So it's just like our potting soil, essentially, just a little bit different, cheaper potting soil than we're using. But so that can work. But yeah. So they avoid, because I think they're pretty organic over there, so they can't fumigate. And I don't know if they have enough land to rotate them the way they should. So.
You mentioned a test farm in Irvine. Is that open to the public?
By appointment. They have, so that's South Coast Field Station, Irvine, where they've done a lot of the research. I don't know if they're doing any strawberry research anymore there, because most of the research has gone up north. But they did a lot of strawberry testing there. They're still doing avocados. And
Pitahaya right now.
mm-hmm.
A lot of the stone fruits. I don't think they're doing strawberries.
Yeah, and they have these open house days that the public is welcome. I don't know if they have a website that you can get on that would tell you this.
It's called Southfield.
South Coast
South Coast.
Field Station. It's a branch of UC Riverside.
There is at the Great Park, there's still a small farm center there where you can go and you can bring kids, and there's an educational center, and I hope they keep that and maybe even expand it. We've got fruit trees, vegetables, and learning center.
Okay, thank you.